Hi, Patrick Nickel with Crash Games here with a bit of a gameplay tutorial for the Lost Dutchman. I'm going to introduce you to some of the tiles and then take you through a couple turns of the game. So of course, treasure is the name of the game in the Lost Dutchman, and there's going to be 30 treasure tiles throughout the Superstition Mountains. There's going to be 3 of each value from 1 all the way up to 10. So here we're checking out the 10 tile, and the really neat thing is we had our artist draw different levels of treasure for each of the numbers. So here on the 10 level, you're going to see that the cart is full and it's overflowing on the ground. So that's going to be a treasure tile. Moving on next, you're going to encounter creatures in the Superstition Mountains, and here we have a javelina. And you're going to know that it's a creature because if you take a peek at the top of the tile here, you'll see that in red, that indicates that it's a creature. So there's a couple different symbols you're going to want to take note of in the game. This is a pretty tough javelina. Creatures and disasters come in difficulty ratings of 4, 5, 6, and 7. So this guy's a 7. So you'd have to, between your action die roll and between your level of whatever attribute they deal with. So for example, the javelina deals in vigor. Your level and your attribute plus your action die roll will either lose, equal, or beat that 7. So if you roll underneath it, you're going to suffer the penalty. And the penalty here is always going to be on the right-hand side with the red. So you're going to lose 4 health. If you beat the creature, you're going to gain 4 health. And then on the bottom, you're going to notice that there's 3, 4, 5, and 6 and a treasure cart icon. That's letting you know that there's a bit of a set collection aspect to this. So if you have one javelina at the end of the game, having defeated him is worth 3 treasure. If you have 2 of them, they're both worth 4. All the way up to, if you're fortunate enough to have gotten all 4, they'll all be worth 6. It's important to note that creatures always deal in the gain and the loss of health, and that creatures will give you treasure at the end of the game as well. So that is a creature tile, the Big Bad Javelina. Next up, we have a disaster tile. And the way that you'll figure out that it's a disaster tile is that it has a brown background behind the title. And this is a flash flood. And it's also a nasty flash flood, and it also deals in the same attribute that the javelina does. And that's going to be an equal spread across the game. Since there's 6 different disasters and 6 different creatures, 2 of each category will always deal in either vigor, foresight, or ingenuity. That's an even symmetrical spread across the board here. So again, you'd have to be pretty strong and or have a pretty good die roll in order to beat this tile. But for that, it's going to give you quite a bit of benefit. If you beat the flash flood, you'll see that it deals with a +2 in vigor here behind the green. And it's going to be worth 4 treasure at the end of the game. I mean, this tile is one of the hardest tiles in the game, so it's going to give you the biggest penalty. You'll also notice that if you lose to it, you're going to drop 2 in vigor. So that is the flash flood tile, one of the disaster tiles in the Lost Dutchman. Coming up next, we have the infamous water level drops tiles. There are 12 of these, or 10 of these in the game, rather. And actually, you know what? I don't know if it's 10 or 12. I believe it's 10. And if you come across one of these tiles, what's going to happen is your canteen level in the game, that's going to start to drop. So the 6 would go down to, a 5 if that's what it happened to be at. And that's one of the end game conditions, is if the water level runs out, everybody's day of hunting for treasure in the superstitions is over. So also when you come across one of these tiles, you immediately reveal what's underneath it on the board, but you don't address it. So those are the water level drops tiles. Up next, we have the bandit tile. And the bandit tile is a bit tricky. The bandit tile is one of the ways that you're able to steal treasure from your opponents. If your opponent has a treasure tile, like let's say they had this 10 and they were able to bury it, and we'll get into that in a moment, they would have it face down, or the land side down in front of them. So those tiles are safe throughout the game. However, if it's face up in front of your opponent, then it's fair game. So the bandit tile allows you to steal treasure in one of two ways. You can either take the first option and fight, and then simply what you do is the highest roll wins. Now you get to add your highest attribute. So let's say that Michael has a 5 in vigor, and that's his highest attribute. And let's say that Robert has a 4 in foresight. Then Michael's essentially at a +1. So they would have to roll dice and then add their modifier to that, and whoever has the highest number is going to win. So that's kind of like a brawl, if you will. That's how you fight for it. How you steal it from your opponent is you would have to specifically say, hey, I want to steal Robert's 3 treasure. And then what you have to do is you're going to have to roll a 5 or higher. If it's a treasure that's higher than a 6, you do get to roll your action die twice to try to beat it. So in the case if you're trying to steal a 3, you would announce that specific one, and then you would have to roll at least a 5 or higher between your 2 rolls to steal it. So those are the bandit tiles in the game. Next up, we have the very powerful but very rare treasure hunter tiles. There's only 6 of these in the game, and so they are very, very powerful. Here we have Adolf Ruth. So if you take a peek at the inside cover page of the Lost Dutchman, you'll get his backstory. But without Adolf Ruth, the Lost Dutchman's gold mine essentially would not have been known. That whole legend would have remained sealed in history for only the few select that knew what was going on. So they all have very, very valuable attributes because, like I said, there's only 6 of them throughout the entire game. This particular treasure hunter, Adolf Ruth, he'll allow you at the end of the game to double the value of any treasure tile. So that's really handy to have if you're able to snag, a higher treasure. Obviously, any level valued is going to give you more treasure, but the higher the better, and that may make the difference between you winning the game or not. So those are treasure hunter tiles. Next up, we have the Mystic Quartz. And the Mystic Quartz is a unique special item tile because it does a couple things. First of all, one of the creatures in the game is an evil spirit. And the evil spirits are not able to be defeated unless you possess a Mystic Quartz. Now, when you defeat an evil spirit, that doesn't mean that you lose your Mystic Quartz. It simply means you have to possess it to defeat it. Also, if you're very, very weak in the game and you want to discard it to fully heal up to 5, you're able to do that as well. In that case, you do lose it. However, if you use it simply to defeat an evil spirit, you go ahead and hold on to that Mystic Quartz. So those are the Mystic Quartz tiles, and that is a rose quartz that's native here in Arizona. Little boring history lesson there for you. Next up, we have the crevice tile in the game. And the crevice tiles, think of them as essentially you've fallen into the rocks and you've slid down, sort of Indiana Jones style into another part of the mountain. So they're going to allow you to basically teleport, if you will, to another tile, any tile on the board. And then once you do that, you would reveal the tile that you landed on, and then you would see, what exactly you've encountered. So once you do that, though, you discard the tile, and that is the crevice tile that's in the game. Next up, we have the pickaxe, and the pickaxe is a handy item tile that allows you to do one of 2 things. You can either discard it to reroll against any creature. So let's say you were going up against that big bad javelina and you weren't able to make it in the first roll, but you were utterly convinced that the dice will lend their favor to you on a second roll. Is you can reroll and try to beat it again. Or you can discard that to bury any treasure tile. So let's say you have that 10 tile and it's burning a hole in your pocket. You don't want to lose it. You could discard your pickaxe and you'd be able to bury your treasure tile at that point. So that is the pickaxe tile. And the very last tile that we're going to be sharing with you today in the game is the climbing gear. The climbing gear is sort of the opposite of the pickaxe. It's going to allow you to discard to re-roll against any disaster, or if you just feel like you need a little bit of a leg up in the game, you could choose to discard it to take another turn. And that can be very strategic, particularly if there's a highly coveted tile out in the mountain, or if there is, it's the end of the game and you're trying to snatch up the last bit of treasure to win. So those are all the tiles that you're going to find in a game of the Lost Dutchman. So here we have a starting setup for a game of the Lost Dutchman, and I went ahead and did this ahead of time, but every player would go ahead and reveal 3 tiles of their own choosing. In this situation, one of the tiles that came out was a water level drop tile, so in that case we would go ahead and drop the water level from a 6 down to a 5. So the water level would now be at a 5 for the game. And then what we would do in that case is go ahead and reveal the tile underneath it, and it's a flash flood. So I have the example here in a 2-player game. The first thing you would do is go ahead and roll your movement die, and I have this set up as a 2-player game. So I'd roll the die, it came out as a 1, and it would be a pretty obvious choice for blue player who's going first here to go ahead and move to this 9 level treasure. The blue player would then take that treasure tile and put that in their player area, and the very next thing they would do is reveal the tile that's underneath it, which happens to be a camping gear tile. So then at that point, the blue player, his turn would be done, and he would place his token back onto the tile that he revealed, which was the camping gear, but he doesn't address that tile. So then the green player would go, he rolled a 2. So the green player has a couple choices. I mean, you're able to move freely throughout the board. Nothing stops you. There's a couple things out. You're going to see there is a Valley Fever tile. There's a Diamondback up there. And there's a lot of blank tiles because it's early on in the game still. So I always like taking a chance. So we'll have the green player go 1, 2. So he blindly enters this tile. He's going to have to address whatever lies there beneath him. Pardon me, I'm not left-handed, but I'm trying to film this left-handed. And so it's a very helpful tile. That's a treasure hunter. This is Ed Piper. And what this tile does is you get to keep this, and you may choose to add 1 to your movement roll each turn. So it's going to allow green player to be able to move throughout the mountain a lot easier. So this was a pretty good turn for the green player. He would go ahead and reveal the next tile. Haha! And wouldn't that be funny? There's only 6 treasure hunter tiles in the game, but here's the second one. This one is Brett DJ Strassner. This is one of our backers from the Kickstarter game. This tile allows you at any time to force your opponents to discard their lowest treasure tile. So that may come in really handy towards the end of the game if your victory is just separated by a couple treasure tiles. So he would put his token back on there, and it would be the blue player's turn. So the blue player is going to move 2, and he has pretty good ingenuity level. If we scan on over here to the blue player's board, you're going to notice that his attributes, he has a 1 in vigor, a 3 in foresight, and a 3 in ingenuity. So he's pretty good in foresight and ingenuity, so he would probably fare very well against that Diamondback up there. And what that would help him do is move along the treasure map here. So we'll have the blue player go up to the Diamondback. The first thing he's going to do, check his attribute level. He has a 3 in it, so between his action die roll and between his attribute level, he wants to beat that 7. So the combined value is going to need to be an 8 or higher. So we'll go ahead and we'll roll that die. Came out as a 3. So 3 plus the 3 is 6, and he actually did not make it. Had he met 7, he would have just tied it and been able to escape. But in this case, he loses, and the penalty here is 4 health. And that's actually a very harsh penalty, because if you scan over, we'll see that the blue player is at 3, so he would exhaust. And the very unfortunate thing here, that would mean that he would lose his lowest level unburied treasure, which his lowest just very unfortunately happens to be a 9, so he would discard that out of the game. He would move his token. His token would come back to mining camp over here, and he would start his next turn. He would reset all of his attributes on his attribute board back to where they were. In this case, they would all still be the same. He would just go back to a 3 in health. So there you have just a quick, very quick sample turn. Had he been able to beat that Diamondback, you would see here on the treasure map that there's a disc that says 5 or 6, 6 or 7, 6 or 7. He would have chosen a way along the path, and let's say that he would have chose this one. He would then have flipped this tile over, and he would have been that much closer to finding the mine of the Lost Dutchman, but in this case, he did not emerge victorious from that. So that is just a sample of a couple quick turns of the Lost Dutchman. Remember, you're always going to reveal a tile if you happen to beat it, or if you remove a tile from the board, and your movement across the board is always going to be unfettered. If you return back to mining camp in the game, which is where the start tile was, if you return back to mining camp there, or if you return to the base camp over here, you're going to be able to either go up 1 in any attribute or 2 in any health. So that's kind of like your camp where you're able to recover. So hopefully this helps you get a leg up and get to playing a quick game of the Lost Dutchman by Crash Games. Hope this was helpful for you.